It's time for our podcast again. It's Practical Product Management, where we talk about how things are practical instead of just theoretical, and how they show up. And today, I think we're going to talk about something that is very interesting, maybe a little controversial or a lot controversial. I don't know. But we want to talk about the dark side of product management. What do you think?
I love it. And it is controversial. Like I have an opinion, so
Yay! I love when we have opinions. I mean, are there very many things we don't have an opinion about?
not very many.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the dark side of product management. Let's start by defining it. Like, what are we saying is dark? What are some of the dark things that happen out there?
Yeah, I think that as product managers, we have the ability to bring solutions to life that solve people's problems.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that we get so wrapped up sometimes in getting people to do what we want, that we actually create anti-patterns.
Right.
And whether that's like making something really hard to opt out of, or, not allowing someone to just be like, don't fucking cookie me. Ooh, sorry. Am I
Right.
allowed to say bad words on
Yeah,
this
you
podcast?
yes, we
Whew.
can swear on our podcast.
The things that actually make your life net less better as the human on the other side of the screen. Like,
Mhm.
I always say that we're basically, big rats running around a dopamine maze, pushing a lever, getting the little pellet.
Yeah.
Um, are we making things easy, simple, and accessible for our
Right.
users in a way that benefits them as people?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a good question. I think, thinking about this, I thought about how many times in my career I've thought or said out loud to my team or to the people I was leading, customers don't know what they want. Like like they have an idea of what they want, but it's our job to go deeper, right? And I think that some to some degree that's true. Customers will often say this is the problem, and as you dig in, it's actually somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But how are we making choices that actually improve what they need improved instead of what we can make money on?
Yeah.
I
And
think
how do
that's
you
the
balance
question is.
that responsibility, right? I
Yeah.
think because you're not in business to not make money.
Right. Right. Right.
But how do you do that without like hiding things or being transparent about pricing
Yeah.
or
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some of the examples that we see. I mean, one that comes to my mind is, and I think, you and I've talked about this before as well, like this idea that as I'm going through some sort of checkout experience or as I'm going through some sort of customer experience, there's this little bit of me that's like, I can't miss out on this. I have FOMO.
oh,
I need to get this now because there's only one left.
and there's four people
Meanwhile,
looking
exactly. Meanwhile, there might be 74 left and no one looking at it.
at it.
And
Yeah,
I know that might not be true, and I still can fall for it, right?
100%, that heightened sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Um, and I just think it's very used car salesman. I think we see it a lot in travel. I
Oh
think we
yeah.
see it a lot in ticketing.
Hmm.
I know that it raises conversion.
Right.
I know that it raises conversion. Even when it's true and four people are looking at that event,
Right.
but there's thousands of tickets left.
Right.
Um, is that really what we want people to do? Is that the experience we want them to have? And if it's true and there's like one unique unicorn left and there are two people looking at it and I want it, it's fine to signal to me.
Yeah.
But the blinking, flashing, attention grabbing, anxiety inducing,
Yeah.
trying to make you so anxious that you click and buy,
Yeah.
I actually find that really unsettling.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing that we've talked about is like this idea, similar and like adjacent, certainly in the ticketing and travel space, this idea that like we act as though that our pricing is transparent and good and whatever, and so we say like this price, we're going to give it to you for the lowest cost ever.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, and so if you go over here, you're not going to get this deal. But you and I both know that the price is not going to be such a big differential because someone's going to make the same amount of money on this,
Yeah.
right?
And it'll show up in the end price in fees or like a something.
Yeah.
I think the funniest thing about these things is that the asset, whether it's a hotel room or a seat on a plane or a seat at a concert, that's kind of like if you add up all the fees and you look at it in all the places, it's kind of the same thing
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
I think what differs is, the class of service you're going to get when you purchase it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of stuff you don't see that no one's being transparent about, right?
Right.
And I think I was
Right.
telling you this story. Like, imagine that you bought something from a cut rate travel site,
Yep.
and that you bought
Never.
two.
I would never.
Oh, you want
Okay.
a good
I have.
deal, right?
I
You
have.
want a good deal, right?
Exactly.
Um, but travel is like getting increasingly more complicated. I think that,
Mm,
more people are going back to traveling. There's more demand. There's more weather disruptions. There's more chance of things going horribly wrong.
right.
Um, and this last week, Friday, I was on the way back from a trip, and I had a layover, and I had just bought from our corporate travel agency that just buys from the airline that I
Hmm.
prefer.
Hmm.
Um, and my flight out was delayed. And my connecting flight, we actually landed when the final boarding was called. We were taxiing when the final boarding was called for my connecting flight.
Right.
If I had
Perfect.
bought, I think there was like 20 of us on the plane that had a
You're like,
connecting flight,
oh
and everybody
no.
was freaking out. The agent, or the lady that was sort of like our flight attendant, she was like, "I know everybody's got a connecting flight." She's on like the over. She's like,
Everyone take a breath. It's going to be okay.
it was like everybody's got a connecting flight that's before, in the next 45 minutes, raise your hand. And there was like a
Yeah.
whole ton of us that raised our
Right.
hand. Well,
Lucy's
we
chasing
taxed.
a fly.
I love it. She's like, you're
It's like,
perimeter defense
you
is
guys go
good.
ahead and do what you're doing. I'm going to chase this fly.
So we land, and now I can't stop watching it. We land, um, and the airline that I was flying with, I'm just going to name them. Like say what you want. Like I was Delta for ages. Now I'm United,
Right.
because they just make it right
Yeah.
when you just stick with them,
Yeah.
right? They just make it right. So we land. I get a text on my phone, and they're like, "Don't worry, we're going to pick you up at the gate and bring you around. We're holding your flight." And so there's like 25 of us that are bolting off this airplane.
Yeah.
They picked me up at the gate. They drove me around to my gate. I got on my plane. There were two other people that happened to be on my plane that, like, about 5 minutes later, came puffing down the aisle, like breathing
Right.
hard because they had to run through the airport. But imagine if I would have bought that ticket somewhere else. There's no
Yeah.
way that airline would have made sure. They don't care. They don't know.
Right. Right. I
Um,
mean, exactly that. Like there's a pretty famous clip I think it's Instagram, and I think I've seen it on TikTok as well, where you can see the girl sitting at the woman sitting at the desk in the hotel trying to check this person in, and the man has said, like, we don't have the room that you're giving us isn't big enough for us, and she's like, it's the one that you reserved, and he says, well, I want to change it, and she says, I can't change it because you didn't reserve it from us, you reserved it from, travel company X.
yeah,
And he's like, but I want you to fix it. And she's like, I can't. And like the
yeah,
conversation, he's getting madder and madder at her. And she's like, nothing I can do. And he's like, well, then
yeah,
give me another room. And she's like, there aren't any. Like, this is the room that we're sold out. And he's like, well, do something about it. She's like, there's nothing I can. She's like, I
yeah.
can't get. He's like, then I want my money back. And she's like, I can't give you your money back.
You didn't buy from
You have,
us.
you didn't buy for, So this whole conversation, and like the point of the video is that this man is unreasonable. However, what, from my perspective, as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, he doesn't realize, he doesn't understand.
Yeah,
As a consumer, he went and bought a room cheaply in his mind, and it's now paying off in a bad way because there's
if everything
nothing
is
she can
perfect,
do.
it works well, but you
Yeah.
don't understand what you're leaving out of the contract in that
Yes.
purchase, and no one tells you.
No.
And so as a consumer, you're just like, oh, $40 cheaper, cool.
Right. Excellent.
Whereas if you would have had full transparency, you might have made a different choice.
Right.
That actually reminds me of an instance. Oh my gosh, I flew into India, and I landed at like 11 o'clock at night. I didn't have a flight out until the next morning. The person who had booked my reservation for me screwed up the first night hotel.
Oh no.
So I show up at the hotel I usually show up at because
Right.
I'm a pattern person, and they're like, "We do not have like this is for tomorrow," and I'm like, "Oh, like
Oh
this doesn't
no.
help me tomorrow. It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm exhausted. I did not sleep."
Right.
They had no rooms. They were completely sold out. I
Oh,
burst into tears and I was like, "Can I just sit in your lobby for a while? Like, can I just
please,
sit in your lobby?
could I just sit down? Right. I'm so
I might
tired.
lay on a couch. Don't judge me. I just need a cup of tea and to not
Could
be
I have
on
a booth in the bar, please?
bed." They went and cleaned a room, not perfectly, but I didn't care because I just really wanted to lay down.
Yeah.
And they found me a place to sleep for the night because I
Yeah.
always stay
Because
there.
you're a
I
regular.
I
Yeah.
booked through them.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I just yeah.
And I
You
think so. I think when we talk about sort of this bad, like bad patterns, one of the bad patterns is that when we're building and saying, let's suck them in with this price and put the fees on the back, let's lower the front end price and put the fees on the back end and have, by the time they get there, they'll just click because they'll be like, oh, well, I guess it's not that, and they won't remember because they've moved on from that other website, all of those things. We are not. We can claim that we're doing it for them, but
That's
but
price.
you and I both know that once they put their credit card in and when they pay, we're done.
Yeah.
Hands clean, moving on.
It's in the
Right?
terms and conditions. What are you
What?
talking about?
They knew what they were getting into. They didn't know,
No.
right? Until you've traveled like we've traveled, they don't know. And I think that's just one example. I mean, travel is just an example, right? Um, and I think then you start looking at, okay, how are we using information? So
Yeah.
price, availability, options, like the fact that there may not be enough supply. How are we using these facts to manipulate people into behavior that may serve us in the moment and them in the moment, and then
Yeah.
backfire later,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, I mean, we've all bought something and thought, well, if I don't love it, I'll just return it, and then found out that we can't
Mm.
because we missed the one thing that said, under these are the only circumstances under which you can return it. And you're like,
Or get your money
oh,
back. Yeah.
I never had those circumstances. Right. It's like, yeah, okay.
That's it.
So I
It's
think
done. It's
that's
the
a
one
big
second.
one.
Do you
Yeah.
know the other one that chaps my hide?
Hmm.
And this is a minor one, but it like just frustrates the stuffing out of me. Cookies.
Oh yeah.
Like if people knew how much of their behavior was tracked and collected and shared, and it just bugs the stuffing out of me. And most of those stupid website like cookie banners, because everybody's
Right.
got them now because we're like gonna be compliant.
Right.
um, they either say accept all my cookies or like go to this place to manage your preferences and we're going to make it a total fucking nightmare so you just accept
Right.
all the cookies. Like
Right.
I don't think that's necessary. i
Right.
I honestly think that the bulk of the benefit of pixel tracking or tracking people with cookies does not happen with the company that's putting the tracking on their website. They're actually
Right.
selling your data into big conglomerates. And it would be so easy to just anonymize all the session data. You can still get enough information to
Mm-hmm.
instrument what's happening on your site and understand where fallout is and where people are having problems. That's a cop out. You do
Right.
not need a cookie to do that.
Right.
Um, and yet we still don't make it easy for people to just say, don't track me.
Yeah, I don't want to be tracked. And
It's
I
lazy.
mean, to your point, it's become so ubiquitous that
Yes.
most users have no idea what they're agreeing to.
Mm-mm.
We've made, and especially like if you live in Europe and you have these GDPR notices that they just do this little combination, like I'm telling you about GDPR and oh, by the way, here's your cookies, right? And they do these little combo banners. And so people are like, well, okay, right?
Yeah.
And the average user has no idea what they've just done.
Nope.
And that now they know where you are and what you're doing and how you're doing it and what you're going to do next. And they've sold your information. And then people are so surprised when they get an ad because something was listening to them.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Oh my gosh, someone's listening to me. Well, yeah,
you're
you gave away
carrying a
your
listening device in your pocket.
duh. Did you
Congrats.
read your did you read your end user license agreement? Like
Right.
no
Right.
one reads the fine print.
No, no, no. And I've had these conversations. I mean, I'm sure you have too. Like, as early adopters of things like Alexa, don't wake up. People will say, well, I don't want something listening to me. And I'm like, this thing you're carrying in your pocket.
Uh,
Yeah, mine's right here. I mean, so I signed up for that. And then I've had people say, like, oh, I would never. Okay, well, is this in your pocket?
yeah. Yeah, that's
Because you would.
you
You
kind of
have.
did.
Right. And so I think, and so then when something happens that feels suspicious, people are like, oh, someone's tracking me. And I'm like, yeah, you agreed to it.
Yeah.
You pushed the button because you wanted the thing.
You
Sorry.
just you just wanted that pop-up to go away, and the only option was accept or
Yeah.
really complicated unsubscribe. We're not really going to tell you the details, and it's going to seem, frankly, a little threatening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
No, for sure.
just to get the consumable good in the moment, we're just going to click
Yeah.
OK.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other one that I think is, I agree with you 100% on cookies. And I think the other one that I think is like shameful, and yet I have absolutely been like, yeah, whatever, is the, would you round up for the children that are starving in, you know, lower Alabama, right? Or would you, don't you want dogs to be able to learn to read, right? Whatever,
Uh,
whatever it is that they're trying to convince me I'm giving money to,
the
right? So there's,
shaming thing. It's
yeah.
not, will you please give money to starving dogs? It's like, why do you hate starving puppies, Leah?
It's
And
like,
then the button is like, yes, save the puppies or no, murder them all.
and you start to hear somehow they can get Sarah McLachlan to start singing in the
Yeah.
eyes of the angel in the background. And I'm like, just hey, take all my money.
I mean,
Right.
I click no,
Please
but
could
there's
I
a little
leave?
voice in my head going, you're an asshole.
Exactly. Exactly. And the thing is, while there is an intent there that is like, let's give to this so that we can do this good thing, there is often a nefarious purpose. If you're shopping at a retail place and they're taking money for charity, they are going to then release that they have raised $1 million for the puppies and that they are the retail place of choice because they care about puppies and that shop over there doesn't care about puppies.
Yeah.
And they've now manipulated us into like, I have to shop there because they care about puppies. Right?
Right. You cared about the puppy. Every person cared about the puppy
Exactly.
because they were manipulated into caring about puppies.
Right.
Because
And they're
everybody
using
else
it for
doesn't want to be a
marketing.
jerk. Yeah.
Right. And for them, it's not, yeah, okay, yes, they did a nice thing. They gave money for the puppies, but they are doing that not out of the goodness of their heart generally, but out of the need to, do something for marketing purposes. And it's how pink washing happens. It's how rainbow washing happens. It's how, all of these things, right? Is that we
Yeah.
fall prey to like, this company cares about women. Do they? They don't have any women on their board.
Right.
They don't have any women executives, but I gave $1 to Girls Who Code.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Awesome. They care about girls. No, they don't.
They don't.
They care about being seen as a company that cares about girls and women
Yes.
or puppies or whatever the topic of the moment. But I think, again, there is I think for a lot of young product managers, we would think like, but I did a good thing.
Yeah.
And there is a nefarious behavior happening there if you're not doing it in a way that allows the customer to walk away from that thing without feeling shame and guilt.
Yeah. I mean, I think the shame and guilt on the button and then the transparency and the like, hey, our customers donated
Mm-hmm. Yes.
to this cause. So there's transparency thing. I also, even just in the general interaction. So all of these
Yes.
things are very true. But let's talk about like, I don't know, what about one of, my favorite website? Um, they're driven by me clicking and reading and scrolling.
Hmm.
They're optimizing their algorithms to get a reaction from me.
Yes.
Um, not always that algorithm doesn't always take into consideration what's best for my mental health,
Right.
or how the presentation of this information results in humanity being net better.
Right.
And so as a result, some of these sites will send us down into like echo chambers of rage bait,
Yeah.
because they're optimized for behavior that doesn't actually lead to net good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and and I do think there's this really interesting conversation to be had about where is the balance between driving revenue.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a public company, your investors and your board probably want you to drive revenue,
Yeah.
and making things better for people. Are you really considering the human on the other side of your product, and
Right.
not just trying to drive, not you don't just, you're not just trying to say like, what can I do to get them to stay longer, is longer better?
Right.
But how do you start to disrupt things when maybe they don't lead to the long-term good of your user? Like, are you
Right.
making your users better, or are you making them, lazier and angrier and more
Yeah.
racist,
Yeah.
and
And
right?
misogynists and
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah, exactly. And I know we have a plan to talk a little bit more about sort of racism and sexism and, bigotry in general and how it shows up in products. But I think you're absolutely right. I think what's fascinating to me is this, like you said, like the what we know we're doing, what we know, what you and I know, and what I think anyone who studies human psychology knows is we are creating a chemical reaction in all of the things we just described, right? And rage baiting people is one of the ultimate chemical reactions, right? So what we do is, the brain does a couple things, but what it primarily kicks off is dopamine and serotonin and, endorphins and, all cortisol, all these things. And if we can get a reaction out of people, they will take a step. And if they take that step, there's more ad revenue or there's something else that happens and they go down this. And anything that is either very rewarding, so gamification, I got to have a thing that no one else got to have, any like, so if there's two of us going for the hotel room and I get the hotel room, I win. Okay. Right. Like, sure. Right. So anything like that is huge. And then anything that can absolutely drive me to action or anger or frustration that keeps me on this loop,
Yes.
those are the things that create revenue,
Yeah.
movement, progression down the rabbit hole. And to your point, I mean, you and I have talked about this. Like, I have been fascinated by how some of these sites, their algorithms move quickly. One minute I'm looking at puppies and kittens and seeing more puppies and kittens, and the next minute I've watched one video that's a 911 call where someone's been shot, and now I've watched 72 911 calls, and my heart is pounding, and I'm angry at the world, and I think this is terrible, and I'm scared.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where are the puppies and kittens? Right? I no longer have seen the puppies, and so it is absolutely creating a chemical reaction. And again, I think a lot of young product managers don't know. They
Yeah.
know that they're getting closer to the OKR or the KPI
Yeah.
or the
Of
uptick is
course.
happening that they want. But they don't know that what they're doing is good for humanity or good for people or good for individuals. If they thought
Yeah.
about it
And
for
I,
a minute, they probably know. But
I think even in the instance where people are trying to solve things like loneliness,
yeah,
and disconnection. I mean, I think you and I were talking about this Japanese dating app that allows you to date and marry an AI. And people are doing this because there's a dearth of loneliness, but
yeah,
does that
well,
really
yeah,
create human connection? I think it's a band-aid.
yeah.
And I don't know what the long-term outcome of that. I think we've talked a little bit about some of the phenomenon here in the US with, maybe some of these groups that get labeled incel become very isolated,
Hmm.
and end up in their own echo chamber of like rage and hate.
Yeah,
That doesn't help bridge that. connection, and
Right.
because maybe it doesn't drive revenue to not have them in a state of rage bait and rage clicking things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I mean, things are about to get interesting on that front. So in the UK, I think yesterday or today, they announced that they're actually sending in the counterterrorism people to try to figure out how to unwind some of what the incel populations are seeing and call it
Wow.
terrorism. Because the epidemic of violence against women and girls in the UK is, I mean, they're calling it an epidemic. That gives you some indication. And
And
so, like, there's an interest, so the question is like, what is the government going to do when businesses fight back, right?
and
Or
how
go
much was
another
that,
angle, or yeah,
how much of that was originally driven by some site trying to get more clicks and giving
yeah,
people information that made them, like, gave the chemical reaction, and like
yeah,
how much are we feeding people's psychosis, or
yeah,
point of view? I don't want to call it a psychosis, but how much are we feeding them a point of view until they're so weirdly isolated and pinpointed that there is
yeah,
no counter.
yeah,
There's no feeling of connectivity. There's just this, despair that leads to weird behavior. And I don't think that's the only
yeah.
instance of it. I mean, clearly
No,
uh, our news sites are riddled with it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a big election year in the world, and I think that this is probably the first. I mean, I think the number I heard on the radio the other day was that something like 49% of all of the countries in the world are having an election in 2024,
Holy cow.
either have or are having, right? And obviously, we know the big ones in the U.S. and the U.K. and parts of Europe. Those big elections, like they are more now than ever. There's a host of bad actors behind what people are seeing and how they're behaving and what's happening, right?
I mean,
And the vitriol and anger is through the roof.
it's
And
toxic.
so, yeah, yeah,
I mean, so for anybody listening that hasn't actually watched The Great Hack, which is the Netflix documentary
yes,
about Cambridge Analytica, I think it's called The Great Hack.
I think so.
Um, this has been happening
Yes,
for years, where populations are being manipulated to do something that is counter to what is beneficial to them,
right.
because we can manipulate human behavior and human emotion on the web. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that if you look back at what politics and elections used to be, it used to be about elevating the best of us and the
Right,
best of ideas.
right.
And you went and you voted and you accepted what the people said, and just the absolute. I don't want to. I mean, I don't even want to call it performative art. It is a circus. It is the monkeys running the circus shit show
Absolutely.
of what is happening in politics, and that's
Right.
because of the way we consume media, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. No, I think so. And I think what we're seeing, I think in that particular case, and I think it's true. I mean, it is sort of what's underneath the incels. And like, I think what we're seeing in the political arena is young people are going, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
What's the point? And given how nasty it is, how do we argue with them?
we can't, right? Because
We
people are
can't.
no longer rational. They're no longer consuming multiple points of view.
Right. Right.
Right? They're
And
so.
these
I mean,
kids have
we're
been
all.
baked in it. We raised them on media, right, in their pocket.
Yeah. I
And
mean, the funny thing is, even if you try to get balanced news, so I make a point of actually trying to, like, be very diverse in what I consume,
right.
understand different points of view. The challenge is even the different pieces of media, because of the way that we serve content.
Right.
The minute I'm cookied, or they have some sort of idea of who I am and what I
Right.
respond to, the news will change based on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really hard to get a balanced point of view. It's
Yeah.
almost impossible,
Yeah. Yeah.
even
All
if you're
right.
trying.
So what do we do?
Yeah. So, I mean,
What
here's
are we
the
going to do about it?
kind of rail against the machine.
Yes. I like it.
I mean, I think awareness is the first step.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of, years ago, the books were all like, how do we get people on the hamster wheel of clicking? And I think I probably got several behind me that talk about that.
Me
How
too.
do we use emotion to get people to do the things we want? I think we are obligated as product people and the people that are building products to actually understand the long-term effect of our product on our population. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the mental health of teenage girls and social
Yeah.
media,
Yeah.
right? So if you are working for one of these companies, or if you're working for any company and building product, you have dark sides
Yeah.
that you're perpetuating.
Hmm.
Are you cooking people? Are you giving their information to information aggregators? You probably are. You probably just,
Yeah.
your agency told you to put a pixel on your site, and you're probably perpetuating some of this stuff. And if you really dug into
Yeah.
what you need to do as a business, you'd realize that none of that is necessary.
Right.
You don't need it to actually achieve your business goals. It's, in fact, I would say it's lazy. Not
Yeah.
understanding the full chain of events is lazy.
Yeah.
So can you look at some of these things with a very hard lens and say,
Yeah.
why do I
Yeah.
need to do this?
I mean, is it
Um,
necessary? Am I, yeah. And I know that I think one of the topics we're going to talk about in the future, probably with a guest, is about sort of how do we do user research? How do we validate what people need? And I think, it's going into user research with a true interest and curiosity in what people need and want,
yeah.
instead of going in and being like, don't you like this? Like, like, don't you think this is great? Which is
Is this
how,
easier to click than that
isn't
one?
this easier for you? It was easier for other people. Is this easier for you? Even in how we talk about and research the things we're building, it requires us to actually be willing to be objective,
Yeah.
not go in. I mean, we all have an opinion. We all have our biases, right? For sure. But I know it, for me, it's often come back to that easy statement of don't fall in love with the solution, fall in love with the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And if I fall in love with the solution, then I'm going to push like hell and do whatever it takes to get my solution to win. Right.
Yeah.
Versus if I fall in love with the problem that I'm trying to solve, I'm going to objectively try to look at it and say, okay, what's right for us as a business, but what's also right for consumers and
Yeah.
customers.
And how do we
Right.
balance that?
And how do we
Because in a
find that
lot of
balance?
cases, there will be conflict. There is inherent conflict in what we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
And I
it?
think there are probably, I mean, I don't know what you think about this, but I know that there are probably product people out there and CEOs and founders and people out there that would say, like, these are adults. They can make their own decisions. Or why should we infantilize our consumers and treat them like children? I mean, my answer to that is because we created a system that makes it really hard to make adult decisions if you don't know all the facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I would say, do you want your mom or someone you love to fall prey to these things to the
Right.
point of obsession,
Right.
right? And I think we all think about happy path, oh, they're only going to spend 5 more minutes
Right.
browsing. Yeah, but
Right.
what if it consumes them? Does it make their life net better?
Yeah.
Is it really going to make your dad or your brother a better person to date
Right.
an, an AI or
Right.
marry one?
Right. Right. I mean, like I said, the only reason I would do it is if I got a tax break. But I mean,
I don't know.
so
Does that count as marriage? It probably does.
because I mean, then we're talking. Now we're talking. But I'd marry the kitten if I thought I'd get a tax break. But no, I'm just kidding. That's not true, people. I don't want to hear it. That was a joke. But
I
so
was
it's
just,
funny because can you see it? Just I can just see the comments now. Leah
oh
wants to
yeah.
marry a kitten.
I mean,
No, no.
honestly, we've talked about some pretty sensitive topics. Like
Right.
this one's going to get some comments.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, so the thing is, I just pulled this sticky note, which I do not do sticky notes on my computer monitors, on my anywhere. You know that I hate that. Marilyn used to get me to take action by putting sticky notes on my computer, and I'd be like, "What is this? Right? What do you
Action
need?
item.
Right? What do you want? Right?" But I have a sticky note that I keep on my computer that literally says, "Am I becoming the type of person I want to become?"
Mm,
Right? And this is so the question for me as I coach people is, am I coaching them in a way that I can say I'm becoming the kind of person I want to be and they can say the same thing? Because as a coach, I could be like, yeah, I can help you solve your problem in 6 months, right? Because
let's keep
that's where
going.
the I could make money for 6 months on this person, or we could have one session, and if we solve the problem, I should set you free, right?
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of interaction, different kind of customer. But for me, this very simple, am I becoming the kind of person I want to become? And am I coaching people to have that reaction? are we as product people creating products that allow people to have the life they want and become the
Yeah.
kind of people they want? Or are we like, how can I suck them in and take as much money from them as we call it user lifetime value for a reason,
Oh, we do.
right? So how can I keep them forever? Right? Do you need to?
Yeah, I wonder if there's an interesting KPI about how do you make people's lives net better or how do you improve someone's life? So, maybe in the future, if someone's got an opinion about OKRs and it's not just LTV, my friends,
Yeah.
but it's like, how do we track making people's lives better? The use of our product actually improves people.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, can you imagine that score
Hmm.
and
I think a
how
lot of I think a lot of apps and websites would score pretty low on that right
I
now.
agree. I agree. And it's, and I think if we cared more about that, what would happen? Right? It would.
Yeah.
So I think what would happen is it would mean that we had to change how we fund businesses. It would mean we'd
Mm,
have to build differently. It would mean that we would have to have a compelling enough product that we would have more people coming in because we might not have them for as long. Right?
yeah.
And so there's things that would have to shift in what we do significantly if we were going to score ourselves on that.
I also wonder if, I mean, like when you think about these mega apps, you think about these mega apps, you think about these mega sites and the billionaires that are created out of them. Billionaires,
Mm-hmm.
because they've mastered the art that we've just talked about.
Yeah.
Not because of altruism,
No.
because they've mastered the art of what we just talked about. Maybe we would all be net better because we wouldn't be enabling that behavior.
Right. Right. I mean, you think about all that. I mean, as you said that, I was thinking, when whatever latest millionaire wants to build a rocket ship and go to Mars or the moon or whatever, because they all do apparently. Like all these rich white men need to go to space. Congrats. And everybody and everybody gets mad and is like, why are they spending their money on a space shuttle when they could spend their money on this? Don't give them the money.
Yeah,
Say no.
just don't go
Walk
there.
away, turn your cookies off. Like instead of being mad at them when they don't spend their billions on the good of humanity, let's not make them billionaires by having and I know that that probably sounds like, oh, Pollyanna's back in, right? But I think that the conversation is warped because we're angry once they have money.
Yeah.
We're not angry when we're making them billionaires. We're obsessed with them when we're making them billionaires.
Oh yeah.
We're proud of them. We want to be like them. When they become one and they do stuff that we're like, hey, give us back some of what we gave you. They're like, no, fuck you.
Yeah.
You gave me all the money, right? And I think I think it requires those of us who build things to take a different look, and takes those of us who buy things. We need to take another look
Yeah.
and have a different mindset, a different conversation with yourself about what you're doing. How are we
Yeah. There's a
participating?
cost. There's a cost to the perceived last ticket, or
Yeah,
the perceived cheapest thing that you can buy, or the free site that gives you all the news that tells you exactly what you want to hear. It
yeah,
is it is a very expensive echo chamber. You're just not paying up front.
yeah.
You're paying later.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever read, I think it's called Trillion Dollar Coach. It's about Bill Campbell, who was everybody's coach, like the guys at Google and Jeff and, like Steve Jobs. He was everyone's coach, and he had been a football coach, and he became sort of this guy that they all went to for wisdom. He would absolutely be disappointed in that we no longer give a shit about do no evil. It's all about ads.
Mm. Yeah.
And that the phone is not this amazing thing that makes us more mobile and possible, but it is a device to manipulate. So I think if you read the book about him that these guys wrote, they wrote the book about him as a memorial to him after he had passed away. I think if they went back and reread their own book, they might have to take a second look at themselves.
Huh, I'm going to read the book now. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you'll love it. I mean, he's an inspiring guy. And you know what? Was not saying it's all got to be nonprofit and we don't make any money. He was like pro profit, pro let's do this well. but he had a soul.
Just don't be evil. Like,
Yes.
I actually really loved that slogan because I think it sort of underpins everything else. If you understand the person you're trying to serve and
Yes.
you understand their problems, not just the one you're solving, but you understand
Right.
the person,
Yeah.
just don't fuck up their life.
Yeah.
Seems
So
like it should be
yeah,
pretty.
seems like it. So I do think that we may get some interesting comments on this. People who disagree with us and people who agree. I would
Cool.
love to have as many comments as possible, and we are happy to have more conversation about this topic.
Yeah.
So if you have an opinion, reach out. If you want to talk about it, reach out. I think I'm open to being challenged on this. I'm open to having this conversation, right? Because obviously Marilyn and I have a perspective, and and we probably even would draw lines in slightly different places at different points, right? Just because of who we are and how we see the world. But I think in general, we have a pretty similar disposition towards all of this. And I think I would be happy to be challenged if somebody wants to come and have those conversations. So
Me too.
if you
Let's
want to
do it.
talk about how you're hooking your customers, come talk to us.
Yeah. It's kind of
Awesome.
like, I don't want to say this out loud, but it's almost like, it feels like it's an analogy or an analog to the opioid crisis,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
We
Totally.
gave you a great painkiller. Too bad it's screwing
No,
up.
why are you misusing it? Because you gave it to me for a headache.
Yeah.
Right. That's why. So yeah, I'm 100%. I totally agree. Maybe that's the book we're gonna write.
Hmm.
All right. Not that we've been talking about writing a book. That's not. I don't want anybody to get any ideas, but we would if we had a good one. Awesome. All right, Marilyn. I will see you in the next podcast.
Awesome. See you
All
next
right.
time.
Bye.